today we're going to be talking about DX in the world of AI and enterprise. I'm joined with a fantastic group of people that are all deep into this. So to kick things off, just to make sure everyone sort of knows who they are and what they do, I want to have each of you introduce yourselves, a little about you, and what each of your companies do. Dustin, why don't you kick it off?
Sweet. Yes, my name is Dustin Schau. I'm head of API client at Postman. I really liked what David Kramer said earlier. Like, if you haven't heard of Postman, what are you doing? Hopefully everyone's used it. Hopefully everyone likes it. And then before Postman, I was co-founder of a company called Gatsby. Maybe also you've heard of it, hopefully. What else? That's it. I'll pass it over to Meagan.
Meagan.
Hey everyone, thank you for having me, Garrett. My name is Meagan Gamache. I'm VP of Product at Render. We're the fastest way to get your idea from code to production. And we support over 4 million developers, including some of the largest enterprises, fast-growing startups like Bridge, the stablecoin company, Watershed, and AI companies like Base44.
Hi folks, I'm James. I'm the co-founder of Convex. I spent the last couple of decades of my life really deeply focused on API design for systems, how to take complicated problems and replace them with simple APIs that are easy to leverage. And taken all that knowledge and designing stuff like the storage system and databases at Dropbox and channeled it into Convex, which is a backend as a service. And so Convex has a lot of companies building their applications, but a lot of agentic code gen tools, using Convex as a target for code gen, as well as a lot of AI agents getting built on Convex using stuff like durable scheduling, et cetera.
Amazing. So everyone here's a heavy hitter in the AI DX game. I want to kind of start with a bit of a hot take that I've been reading about on the internet or Twitter. I've heard a lot of people saying DX is dead, AX or agent experience is the new hotness. And so kind of want to get some opinions on, is this the end of DX? Do we not need to worry about how developers think about, because AI is just going to do it for us now?
I hate it. Yeah.
Say more.
I mean, let's just imagine thought experiment. Imagine that what's good for agents is not what's good for humans, right? What's going to happen in the future? Systems are going to evolve, APIs are going to evolve to be suitable for agents and not suitable for humans. We're going to build systems that are not maintainable by people. We're going to build systems that are not going to be able to be understood and not going to be manageable. Now, that would be, from my perspective, a terrible future, right? But fortunately, I don't think it's true. I mean, and not just my opinion. I know we've been chatting about this. I know we all agree with this. We've run a ton of benchmarks, and we find that really clean, composable abstractions designed to be intuitive for humans are what agents need. I almost find it a lazy perspective to say, oh, well, agents can just use a crappy API, right? Just give them some text and they'll figure it out. No, I don't believe that's true. I believe that API design matters more than ever. I'll turn over to the others.
Well, yeah, I think we were joking backstage that the controversy or disagreement on the panel might be at an all-time low. But I actually really agree with this point. And if anything, what agent experience, if that's a new paradigm right now, it actually signals a raising of the bar for developer experience. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason for that is, if you look back over, SaaS applications, a lot of the APIs that SaaS applications originally released used language and naming in the API that was really internal, kind of became internal language to that company. And it may not be conceptually clear or semantically accurate. Well, what do we know about agents? Agents are semantic engines. They rely on semantic accuracy to make good decisions. And so if anything, it's now going to be incumbent upon us as the folks who are building new developer experiences to provide even clearer abstractions and clearer APIs that'll benefit both agents and developers. So I think, if anything, the bar is raising and it's going higher and higher here.
Yeah. I completely disagree with both of these two. No, I'm just kidding. I guess just to add, I would question the what is good DX, what is good AX, and when I think about what makes good DX, it's things like having high quality documentation, is that your API is fast, reliable, scalable, highly available, basically it's like a human can use it and it makes sense and it works. Those same things are also true for an agent or AI invoking your API. So to me, I think I agree with the other, everything said previously, and that good DX is a baseline for being like AI ready. It is good AX when you think about what is good DX.
I just want to double down on that idea of conceptual clarity because I love it, right? And even though we all agree with each other, I think a lot of people don't agree. At least I've been hearing a lot of people kind of say things like APIs don't matter anymore. Why do APIs exist? APIs exist to make it simple to manage complicated things. Otherwise, you would just expose all the underlying primitives directly, right? And for agents to work effectively, to be able to be composed, to be able to write code that's manageable and understandable, to be efficient and not take a very long time to produce output, good APIs are really, really important, and that requires human beings, as of right now, human beings, to invest very serious effort in conceptual clarity with the services they provide. And we've all done this at our companies, is partly why we all agree with each other, probably.
Or at least we aspire to have all
We aspire, yeah. We aspire to.
Yeah. I think also maybe to extend outside of APIs for a second, a lot of, so Render is a cloud platform, and we have, dashboards and CLI and other interfaces that developers use and now agents are using. And I think one of the things that, my team has been thinking about is when you are deploying code today, it's not just a human activity anymore. You're engaging with Claude Code or whatever tool your tool of choice or the tool of the moment is. And so when we think about these, I think the sort of use cases of these interfaces are changing. So we expect now that CLIs will be used by Claude Code. That means that there's like a different standard, different use case. And I think that really designing with both the agent and the developer in mind is going to become increasingly important. And then with the dashboard, one of the things we've been thinking about is, at Render, we have an infrastructure as code product, and when people update it, now it might actually be updated by an agent. So how do we make our dashboard a better environment for the developer when the developer is in an editing mode? And so I think that there's just new problems in DX also that will emerge as well that are really interesting and worth digging into too.
Yeah, it's actually a great segue to my next question, which is, okay, so you still need DX. Good DX helps build good AX. But there are these different kind of paradigms of interaction patterns, right? Like I might be using Cursor to help me write the code. I might be using Claude Code. I'm stepping away to go grab a coffee, and I come back and I hope it's working, though I will probably review it. So what have you seen that's effective in like either what you need to do, whether it's in the API design, the documentation, or just how that works in a way that kind of deals with that different modality that people are starting to use?
I mean, a lot of folks don't consume our docs the way that maybe we originally intended when we wrote them, right? We have docs pages, but a lot of folks don't read them and maybe don't have the attention span to read them anymore. And so they consume them via an agent or something, right? They either ask a chatbot on our docs page. We have an embedded chatbot that's trained in our docs and our APIs, or they're asking ChatGPT how to use Convex. So our docs have to be written in a way that's easily consumable by LLMs. And one thing I think is very important is information density. Again, this is like also another fallacy I see out there, because you're writing docs, they're going to be consumed by an agent, by a model somewhere, and you want those docs to contain a lot of useful information, right? They should be dense. It should be mostly, our docs are all written by human beings, right? Because if you're putting 2 sentences into an LLM and that's generating 2 pages of documentation, and that's going back into an LLM to train a model, you're only really giving it 2 sentences worth of useful information there, right? And so at the end of the day, like, what is the useful information you're conveying? I think it's like there's we all go back to that mode when we're writing an essay in high school where you're like, well, I need to produce 10 pages, so let's see how I get to 10 pages. No, what you need to do is convey several key points, right? And so I don't have a problem with, like, oftentimes we use LLMs to determine whether our docs are good, like to ask it questions and see whether it knows after reading our docs. But at the end of the day, like there's an even higher standard now for documentation because it has to get to the point. A whole bunch of fluff is not useful when someone's consuming it via a chatbot that's stripping out the fluff anyway.
Yeah, I guess I'll just add to that. So at Postman, we have a very similar like inline chat tool basically that like sources our latest documentation. It's actually a really frustrating problem. So it's like as you are building new functionality, maybe I'm going to ChatGPT, I have no idea the last time our docs were like sourced, and so there's a whole new category of thing. I think it's called like GEO, like generative engine optimization. It's like the new SEO kind of. We've been exploring that space a little bit, but yeah, I think this is where I get really skeptical of like vibe coding. It's like every time I try it, I'm on the bleeding edge of something and it never works. And it's oftentimes because of this like very basic problem that the last time the LLM scooped up this thing of choices documentation was who knows when. It's basically a black box. So I think it's similar to what we were talking about with like DX. The fundamentals of like writing good documentation, making it. James, I like the ideas around asking an LLM, is this good or what do you use for good or something is a highly important exercise that we should all be investing in more.
I really love that idea of like running evals on your own docs by going back to ChatGPT and sort of seeing if it can explain your service to you. That's great. We actually do something similar. We're really invested in GEO because a lot of developers go to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever to figure out how to build their app and figure out where to host it. And I think it's been a really important, really discovery mechanism for our company. And I think that the more you can make the LLMs understand your documentation, it's just the better for developers. They can really accelerate their workflows.
Yeah, being the default answer in ChatGPT is like being the top page rank on Google kind of now in some cases, right?
Yeah.
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 I want to talk a little bit about all of y'all's companies are helping people build, not just, they're not just using AI to use your tool, but actually building AI agents and AI software with it. There's so much sort of hype and lots of kind of toys that people showcase of, oh, look at this thing that the AI can do. I'm curious what y'all have seen both from output of actually useful production systems that people are deploying with your tools or not that are actually have AI in them, and sort of what are the actual like recipes for success there? What are those companies doing that maybe other people aren't doing or don't know about, that's allowing them to get to this point of real production value, not just a nice demo to show at a talk?
I have a quick answer for this one. So yeah, we have a product called Flows. It's like a workflow builder. It's actually when ChatGPT launched Agent Kit. It's like, yeah, we did that about a year and a half ago. I think that I did see that MIT study a couple months ago where it's like people who have been, or organizations who have been investing in agents and AI, like 95% don't actually deliver upon the goals of what they were setting out to do. And I think we're seeing a lot of that with agents. I think a lot of agents are really just like workflows that you didn't necessarily need AI. And to like build a good agent, to build a good workflow, you have to have like a deep understanding of like the problem, the context, the like data. So we've been building a lot of our internal agents. I actually only use one of them. There's around 3 or 4. But the one that I use on like a weekly basis. So we have 3,000 open GitHub issues. We're an open basically project where if you open an issue, we'll see it. And we use that to kind of like, we use our Flows product with this agent. I'll like query it like, hey, what are some recent issues we've been seeing? Or, hey, I'm looking to kind of like summarize, like I have an idea on, we could really improve the scripting environment. Like, how could we do this? And that's actually an agent that I like interface with quite a bit. And it's actually made me more productive as like a product leader, engineering leader, just like getting closer to that space. So we've been trying to like eat our own dog food, so to speak, so that we can form those patterns and then also help guide our customers when they're building their own agents as well.
We also have a workflow product. I think you're going to hear this phrase more and more, workflow. I mean, the characteristic I see of good agentic systems is systems built on good primitives, right? And those primitives, one of the most common primitives here is like durable workflows. Scheduling something to happen in the future, go and check a system, see what the status is, talk to a third party, aggregate those results. It's workflow, right? It's and the building blocks for workflow are scheduling and transactions, basically. And so a lot of really compelling applications, often in the customer service sector, applications where we have to go and consume state and summarize it and then go talk to another third party, built on Convex using workflows. I really do think, I really like this model of like the fuzzy and the concrete. You know, like there's the kind of abstract human style problems, reading some documentation, talking to a person, I don't know, generating some text, right? These are problems that traditionally computers have been quite bad at. And then there's the concrete problems that traditional computers are excellent at. Databases and scheduling and APIs and storage and stuff. And I think what I've seen very successful is the LLMs focusing primarily on the human style tasks and the platforms focusing on the platform style tasks. And they have a very symbiotic relationship. I think where they start to fall apart is when you just say, well, get rid of the platform, and then the LLM will just do everything for you. I have not seen almost any examples of that being successful, apart from agentic code gen, which has been relatively successful. Yeah.
I think that the use cases that we've seen most successful on the platform that are agentic are narrow, specific, and clear. So one of my favorite customers of Render, they're an early stage startup called Paradigm. They're building a smart spreadsheet. And the way that spreadsheet works is that they essentially kick off an agentic workflow for every cell. And so they're seeing a lot of applications in recruiting and different kinds of operational roles, because you can create a spreadsheet and then say, to your point about like fuzzy versus concrete, here's a fuzzy operation to go, like, look up, like Google something about all these different kinds of people and come back and populate the next column with what you find. And that's like a really nice example of where you can deploy agents. It's a task that if you gave it to a human would take an hour, be really annoying. You can get it done really quickly to a high quality bar because it's narrow, it's scoped. And it can really accelerate some kinds of knowledge work. So I think like those kinds of use cases are just phenomenal. The other example I've seen in our platform is there's this company called Tolens. They're building like an AI best friend. And I think that loneliness is a real problem. And so people are really trying to find ways to connect and learn more about themselves and sort of engage. And I think it's a very reasonable application of AI. And this particular product also uses voice, which I think is going to be just an incredibly important modality as AI gets better and as voice generation improves. We love communicating with voice.
Yes.
We're not running the panel over Slack. And I think that this is just like opening up more of these more natural modalities. Agents kind of enables that, and there's just so much. The limit right now, and I think, is really on ingenuity. Like I think it's really about experimenting with these new products, these new platforms, these new primitives, and there's a lot more that we can do, even if we, take the constraint of focusing on narrow, specific tasks.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I've seen a bunch of people that have really adopted voice, and it just like kind of unlocks the ability to just fire things off and get things moving, because it's just it's much more natural, right? Instead of having to like figure out how to type everything and everything like that. Also, it helps if you're like dealing with a baby and trying to get stuff done at the same time. So it's very effective. I'm curious. You probably have people coming to you, and the AI hype cycle is so real that people are like, I gotta do something, right? Like I gotta do something with AI, right? How do you both steer them out of like making bad decisions in terms of what they're like trying to build, or maybe going off of like very general problems that aren't very specific, and actually like guide them into figuring out, okay, what would be useful for them to do? I'm curious, like how do you actually like help people use your product, but also not make decisions that they're going to regret in the future?
I think it's important that systems encode guardrails. I think we have to accept some degree of skills deterioration in some domains. We can maybe talk about that more, but I think if you make things extremely convenient for people, they often are going to be less intellectually engaged when using those systems. because it was easy, so they just hit the button and it works. And so I think that there is an increased demand for systems that make it easy to do the right thing and very hard to do the wrong thing. For example, once upon a time, it was really hard to build an RPC service that serves a website, and now it's very easy. And so now it's very easy to build insecure web apps. Because it was so easy, you just didn't think about all the work required to secure this thing. And so it's very important to build platforms that are secure by design, right? And that's just one example, right? So I think it's important for anyone building systems, building platforms, just to understand where the industry is heading and accepting we can't change humanity and easily. We can't change the industry easily. And so we're going to, us as service providers, have to make it add guardrails, and that's hard. And so a lot of the work is going to be like how to make it easy to do good things and hard to do the wrong things.
Yeah, I imagine that Convex and Render are sort of tackling similar problems here, where you have kind of two categories of things. One category, which is I'm a more novice developer, but the tools are giving me so much competency. I'm able to get to such a strong app outcome.
Dig your own hole really fast.
I can dig my own hole real fast. And now I need a place, because I like my app, it's useful. I need a place to scale it or grow it or make it production ready. And how do products like ours sort of help you get on? We try to help you get on the right path, and that's where I think our guardrails are really important. And then there's the other category, which is how do we make sure that AI systems or apps that have AI embedded in them, the AI is doing what we expect, and generating code that's safe to execute, or at least executed in an environment that's safe, be that some kind of like code sandbox or similar, so that it doesn't have side effects. And I think that's a really important point, as something that we think a lot about as an infrastructure provider. One thing I want to know about the other part of your question, though, which is with when customers come or people are talking about okay, well, I really want to get started with AI in my company, but I don't know how. I think the thing I really try to recommend people do is kind of to build off my previous point, find something in your workflow, in your day, that takes you up time, and try to do it with an AI. And then try to do that as much as you can, because I think a lot of what's going to become important is just really familiarity with these tools. And once you kind of get a sense of oh, I could use this MCP server to evaluate, do all these PRDs actually have the security section filled out? I don't know, something you might want to do, depending on where you sit in a company. That can give you an idea, oh, I could build an app that does this. I could build an agent that does this. And I think that's, just experimentation is so important.
Yeah, I don't really understand about, because I know PMs always fill out the security part of the PRD templates. So,
Yes, absolutely.
They never skip that.
Never.
Yeah, I have a couple of things.
Yeah,
I guess just if I had any advice, I guess there's different kinds of adopting AI in your company. There's adopting AI in various practices, using AI for engineering or product or design. I think everyone should be doing that, at least exploring, experimenting, just trying stuff out. And then there's also adding AI to your product. One thing I actually love, maybe this is more of a hot take than others, leaving the Bay Area for a bit and then talking with anyone else that you know who's not in the Bay Area about anything that you just feel immediately behind on. It's oh shit, where's our MCP server? Oh God, we're way behind, and ultimately a lot of these things, it is a bit of a bubble, in the Bay Area. But, when I think about the way markets move, early adopter crowd is happening right now, and I do think that when I look over the last 10 years in technology, there was grifty stuff, and there's some grifty stuff now in AI as well. But AI does solve real problems, for your users, for your teams. And I think that just doing stuff, I know that's really vague advice, just do stuff and you will learn, you will adapt, you will iterate. I think focusing on concrete problems, like Meagan was saying, is a really good first start. Internal problems maybe is a good way to form conviction, and then think about your user problems, your customer problems, et cetera.
I love that you both mentioned MCP, because I can't help but rant.
Oh, here come the hot takes.
Yeah, I mean, Convex has excellent MCP support. You can do so many cool things. You can write a function and send it to the server and ask if it's going to be fast or not. And there's all this really cool stuff, right? But you got to have some discipline and some responsibility. And so, I mean, if an intern at your company said, hey, can I have a button on my desk that drops the production database? I promise I won't press it unless I really need to press it, right? You're not going to give the intern that button, right? But we have customers ask all the time, hey, can I have MCP support for deleting a production database? And the answer is no, right? At least right now, I mean, we're trying to figure out ways to make this safe, right? But it's just not sensible to expose very dangerous things to LLMs that you wouldn't expose to an engineer. And so, there's like enthusiasm. You can do great things with these technologies, but there's got to be some degree of common sense there.
It's a great example of having constraints built in, right? So it's not even possible to delete the database, but like ChatGPT can't go off the rails.
And you're talking about security, but like as a user of a lot of MCP servers, there are so many bad ones, And so I think that this is where like this whole like DX thing again like comes in play. It's like there are things about building an MCP server. You can't just do a one-to-one mapping of like all of your APIs in the company. You have to think in terms of like use cases, and that helps the LLM infer like, all right, here's how I can do stuff. I can do more complicated things. Like I think Notion published a good case study on this of where their first MCP server, I hope no one that works at Notion, was trash. It was not good. And then they like published a great kind of like, here's what we learned building a good MCP server. And I think it's highly illustrative to like read that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's great that they're willing to talk about it, right?
Totally.
That's an important thing is like
Yes.
what didn't work and what has worked. I want to switch gears a little bit with the time that we have left. Y'all are all leaders at your companies. You have teams. How is AI affecting like things internally from whether it's like hiring or team process? I'm deeply worried that like we're never going to hire junior engineers. Like they're just not going to be able to get jobs anymore because everyone's like, why do you need a junior engineer? You have AI, it's fine. But like what kind of changes are you seeing and kind of what is or isn't working well?
I can go first. Yeah, so it's funny because I don't actually see myself as like a product leader. I manage an engineering team, and then I also have like a product manager. One thing that I found really amazing about AI is that every discrete function, whether it's like product, engineering, or design, I feel like it helps them up level in the things that they don't know very well. And so like I think we have really talented engineers at Postman, and I just think it's very whack in like the modern era to have like a product manager whose only job is to write specs. And it's like, no, like if you have a great product engineer, you can like coach them to become a better writer, use tools like ChatGPT, Cursor, whatever, to like help write the spec, and you actually get like a fairly good, sophisticated result. So I think that this is like the early advice on like using tools. I think that AI is a really good uplift in anyone becoming more of like a builder, but that builder quotient doesn't have to just be everyone's a better engineer now, or PMs are building features. Like, not really, at least not in my experience. Yeah.
This is so interesting. I might disagree with you.
Oh, great.
I kind of think that there are two things that are happening. And one is now there are, the AI can take on certain tasks, but there are things that AI is really, really good at and things that it's not good at. And in my experience with like product and engineering, maybe to focus on those two functions for a second, because of how like if LLMs have a killer use case, it's writing code. And for that reason, I feel much, much more comfortable saying like, hey, PM, or even hey, designer, go like fix this front end bug or something. Like use Claude code to do this, because there's a true advantage from the LLM. But I actually think that for other kinds of tasks and knowledge work, LLMs should be used by people who are already expert at that thing. So for example, strategy or writing a really good product spec, I think that the people for whom that they have really good taste, they understand exactly what makes a good product, they can express that really clearly. For them, AI can be a huge accelerant and really like amplify that skill. But for people for whom that doesn't come as naturally, I think maybe there's some kinds of simple products where a spec could actually be decent by that person with an LLM. But there are a lot of cases where that product is going to kind of get you in the wrong path. And so I kind of think that we are sort of moving to that world where roles are overlapping more. And it's really a balance of, okay, how do we help people who are excellent in their craft, be that sort of strategy or design or engineering, really kind of amplify the thing they're really, really good at? And I think that, again, when that overlap exists between the thing they're good at and the thing the LLM is good at, that's when real magic happens. You can really accelerate certain kinds of engineering, for example. Yeah. And then using LLMs, more cautiously where that skill mismatch is, because I think you can kind of get a lot of wasted effort sometimes, and this might be where some of that kind of MIT study sort of comes into play. If you get wasted effort around things that the person's not actually that good at, the LLM is not that good at it either. Okay, it's done, but like, are you actually getting to the outcome you want?
So it's my job. It's all of our jobs to develop talent at our organizations, and I think I do it through two mechanisms: accountability and active learning. So accountability, like I hold human beings responsible for the work they produce. I don't hold LLMs responsible for the work they produce. I pay a person, and they report to me, and they work, and I can have a conversation with them if that doesn't go well. This would never fly at Convex, but I've seen friends at other companies send me screenshots of code reviews where an engineer just puts some junk up for review, frankly, and then says, "Oops, sorry, Claude wrote that." Never, ever, ever write that in a PR that I review, right? You are the author of that PR, right? And you are responsible for, use whatever tools you want, right? And you can have agents doing all sorts of things. At the end of the day, you're accountable. So it makes it easy to compose and kind of scale this within an organization. Most of the time, as long as it's within compliance, I don't care what tools you use, you're responsible for doing good work, right? The second thing, though, is active learning, and that's a tough one. It's a tough one because we can talk a lot about how valuable LLMs are for passive learning, because now you can read stuff way more efficiently, you can ask questions, and you can look at examples, and that is very valuable. And so I think the opportunities for passive learning have skyrocketed. There's never been an era before, and I do this all the time myself. I ask ChatGPT questions every day to passively learn how I could change some light switches in my house or something. But active learning is what you do when you're faced with a problem and you solve it yourself through hardship and no guidance, and you develop intuition and skills. And I think it's getting harder because shortcuts do inhibit active learning, in my belief. And so I do, when we interview people, I don't do any fancy AI interviews. We interview someone on a whiteboard because I want to see how they think inside their head. And oftentimes, we're fortunate enough to have a distributed systems database platform company, and LLMs happen to be really very bad at this. And so our engineers are forced to actively learn and know what they're doing. But if you have a company where your engineers are doing a substantial amount of their coding via a coding agent, I would find some means to encourage people to deeply understand what they're doing and solve problems using their own initiative, because I do think to get from junior engineer to senior engineer, there is a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that is required, and pretty skeptical that you can jump straight to senior engineer without going through that process.
Yeah, makes sense. With that, we'd love to take a few questions with the time we have left.
I don't get to argue with Meagan. No, I'm just kidding. I don't disagree with what she said.
Any questions over there? Yep.
So, where to go to get the customer insights except the Bay Area? Should we go to Midwest? Should we go to New York? Should we go to Europe? Like we're all in a bubble here, so.
I think that one's for you, Dustin.
Yeah. Where do I go for customer insights? I'll give you a really glib answer. Wherever your customers are, anywhere in the whole world. But I think my advice was, if you're in the Bay Area, which I presume you live here, I think it's really advantageous to like take a trip somewhere else. It could be Europe, could be Middle of America, could be New York City, wherever, and then just like give a talk in a meetup or talk to random people in a coffee shop. Like, I think you learn a lot about basically the rat race of the Bay Area, and it's not to say it's not a fun rat race. It's just that it's an exhausting rat race, and so I've always found that highly beneficial. It's in the same way of like when you talk to like another like engineering leader and you're like, oh God, like there's so much shit every single day, and they're like, oh yeah, me too. Like I find that like kind of like soothing and like sort of therapeutic.
Question up there in the back.
Yeah, hi. So you all mentioned that you'd want your teams, PMs, designers also to sort of use tools, AI tools to contribute. So is there like do they contribute by developing prototypes using vibe coding tools, or like what is the process like? Are there any particular tools that you recommend?
I can give a first answer. It really pains me because my former startups were competitive with Vercel, but V0 is a great tool. So a lot of our teams are using V0. It's a great kind of like front-end prototyping tool. I've seen product managers, PMs, and then designers use it more, and it's like really quite fun because I've always found that when you like use like a Figma artifact, you never really get true understanding and like true feedback until you have something that you can like play with. And I found that V0 can really like accelerate that like prototype to feedback cycle.
We have a code-gen tool called Chef. Our DX folks are always building cool applications. Even stuff like managing an event or doing a leaderboard for open source contributions or whatever. So yeah, I mean, there is certain use cases you can absolutely build really cool stuff really fast without having to, beg the engineering team to help, which is, I think, is a very cool reality we're in now.
Yeah. It's also, maybe this is where, like the Meagan stuff earlier, I mean, what the product manager is responsible for is like deeply understanding and knowing the customer, and then like solving their problems and like getting to revenue. So it's like, yeah, these are useful things to do to like prototype, but also it's like the core competency of like accountability of a product manager is to like produce things that delight customers, and there's no replacement. Like, yeah, maybe it helps you a little bit like uplifting the feedback cycles, but you still got to talk to a crap ton of customers.
Yeah, I think that any of these tools are really great environments for testing new ideas and getting to that end-to-end prototype, as Dustin is pointing out, is just so powerful. You can get so much more insight when you're playing around with something. There's nothing you can't write. There's nothing you can write in a spec that's going to really create that much clarity.
Great. Another question? Down here.
In the first question, y'all talked about how conceptual clarity in your product and APIs is even more important now, like the opposite of the Twitter rhetoric. How have you raised the bar for that at your companies?
Well, one evaluative means of doing so, I mean, we built a code gen tool on Convex to see how well code gen did on Convex, and it did really well, right? But in the process, we found some common pitfalls where it tripped up, right? And actually, I found LLMs great at pointing out the gaps, right? And so we've gone and made some improvements to our APIs based on that.
Yeah, I guess I would just say, so if anyone hasn't used Postman, this is kind of like our core reason for existence. Like we want to help other developers make better APIs, and we recognize that like building APIs is like a collaborative sport. So we think that like our own, of course, APIs, like we've learned things like we launched something called agent mode, kind of like Cursor's side panel in the Postman product. And I was, I did a live demo in LA a couple months ago, which was very scary, demoing AI stuff. And to like make the agent mode feature work better, because I was basically saying like, please fix this API. Once I added documentation, the result got a lot better. And I know that seems like a very trite answer, but like ultimately I think it's kind of the basics. It's like when you start to play around with stuff, you like relearn the like basically foundational elements of like what makes a good API, and it's like good documentation, it's fast, it's tested, et cetera. That's what we try to do at Postman for other developers as well.
Cool. I think that's all the time that we have. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for our speakers for joining.
Thank you.